All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. We're finishing up week one of the second annual SBIR STTR Con 2020. I'm Misty Madero. I am the Industry Contracts Officer and SBIR STTR Resource Center Manager at UC Riverside in the Office of Technology Partnerships. As always, I would like to thank our sponsors, the SBA and our Orange County Inland Empire SBDC network for their support and to help make this possible. Our conference is organized by UCR's EPIC SBDC, our Small Business Development Center, and our SBIR STTR Resource Center. Our EPIC SBDC provides individualized mentorship and access to capital to technology entrepreneurs at no cost. As you will see, these are some of the ways that our Resource Center can help you. Again, at no cost, so please, if you're interested in finding out more information about our services or you would like to sign up, you can reach out to me or Martin Kleckner. Again, we look forward to spending the day with you. We have two presentations today. I would like to now introduce my co-host, Martin Kleckner. He is our entrepreneur in residence and SBIR STTR expert. So take it away, Martin.
Misty, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Day number 4, it's moving on, and really honored to have the National Institute of Mental Health focusing on neuroscience research, translational clinical research, clinical diagnostics, treatment, dissemination, and implementation, that is to say, of evidence-based research on mental disorders. Really honored to have Dr. Meg Grabb with us today, and she is Program Director for Novel Pharmacologic and Device-Based Intervention Programs for Pediatrics as part of the Division of Translational Research at NIMH, and her focus there is early-stage testing of investigational drugs and brain stimulation devices in pediatrics, likewise biomarker development for stratification and pharmacodynamic designs. In addition to that, Dr. Grabb also oversees the SBIR program at the NIMH, and there she focuses, and you'll probably have to correct me on this one, Meg, so forgive me here, focus on optogenetics and large-scale electrophysiological recording, drug and device development, high throughput screening tools, also biomarkers and digital health technologies. And not to be outdone, she also is the co-lead of the BRAIN Initiative dissemination team with the NIH. So Meg, I hope I did you at least a little bit of justice there, and that was just simply a small extraction of everything that you've been doing and accomplishing. So I'll hand the baton over to you and look forward to your talk. And everyone, while Dr. Grabb is giving her presentation, start populating the Q&A thing down at the bottom. There it is. And ask questions. So this is planned to be a highly interactive meeting, and so we're counting on you to ask any questions that are of great interest to you. So take it away, Dr. Grabb. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, everyone on the West Coast, and I hope everybody's hanging in there with everything that's going on with COVID and with fires and so on. Just to let you know, we are thinking of you. So as Martin said, I coordinate the small business research programs at the National Institute of Mental Health. I have many other roles there, but this is my main focus. So I'm going to give you an overview about my institute so you can learn a little bit about it, and then I'm going to introduce you to our SBIR program specifically and talk about goals and priority areas for technology development. And then I'm going to switch and talk a little bit about the BRAIN Initiative because it is highly relevant to the work that we're doing in the NIMH SBIR program. So this is just a few pictures of our institute. We're located in Bethesda and in Rockville, Maryland, although I'm working at home right now. And we are the lead federal agency for research on mental illnesses. We support more than 3,000 research grants and contracts at universities and other institutions including small businesses that are across the country. We also do support some overseas projects as well. And then we have an intramural research program that supports approximately 600 scientists on the NIH campuses. So this is our vision. We envision a world in which mental illnesses are prevented and cured. And our mission is to transform the understanding and treatment of mental illnesses through basic and clinical research, paving the way for prevention, recovery, and cure. Now that's key, basic and clinical research. And that will help kind of explain our focus in the SBIR program. Just to let you know, everything I'm presenting is publicly available. So you can go to our website and learn a lot more about the Institute and priority areas. But here's a list of examples of the types of psychiatric disorders that we support. And they range from anxiety disorders to eating disorders to bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, and many others in between. We issued a strategic plan about a decade ago, and we've just updated it for the next 5 years. And that also is publicly available. And in this plan, we focus on 4 main goals, and they're listed on the bottom of this slide. The first goal really focuses on understanding the brain and understanding brain function. And if you think about it, psychiatric disorders are behaviorally based disorders. They're behaviorally diagnosed disorders. What that means is, to date, we do not understand the pathology of any of our disorders, okay? So we need to move to that biological level. Yes?
Hi, Meg. Sorry, your slides are not progressing.
Oh, they're not?
Yeah.
Oh. So
maybe put it in presentation mode.
I'm in slideshow. I'm on slideshow. Okay, wait a minute. From, let's see, current slide. Do you see that?
We see the slides, but they're not.
Hang on. Let's see. How do I? So you're not seeing anything here. What exactly are you looking at? Do you see all the slides right now?
We
see all the slides.
We see what you were seeing on the left, and if you go down below that first slide, Meg, and go to the at the bottom, you can click on slideshow presentation there, that little icon, and that should get you moving forward.
Okay, wait a minute.
That's on the right side there.
So sorry about this, everyone.
No, that's no worries.
I'm not sure what I'm doing here. So I have, oops. If I go to the first slide, you said, I'm on.
So down below, right under the NIH logo there, you'll see some icons there, and the one to the right.
Oh, I don't have any icons for some reason.
Right down below. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't. So I have, I don't know. I give presentations all the time. I haven't run into this problem.
Hannah, can we take over control of the slides, or Misty, by any chance, and help Dr. Grabb here?
So if I get out of slide presentation, and I mean, I was calling the right screen, but I'm evidently not. So let me end show. Can I end show? And then, let's see.
So you just moved to the second slide.
Okay, so it's on the wrong. Okay, how do I? Oh, wait a minute. Okay, new share. Here, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's on the wrong there. Screen 2. Okay. All right, let me go. Okay, now what do you see?
So we're looking
Slide
at
2,
we're looking
agenda.
at slide number 2, Meg. Yeah,
Okay,
the
3.
agenda.
Okay. All right. So let me just, so this was my agenda. This is just telling you a little bit about our institute. And are you going to have these slides publicly available or to your people or no?
Yes,
Because
well,
they can be.
if
Okay,
you allow
good.
us, we'll make them available.
Yes, that's fine. So this has all been cleared by the government. This is our vision and mission. Sorry, so I was linking it to the wrong screen. My apologies. And this is examples of some of the disorders that we focus on at our institute. But again, you can go to the website to learn more about the various areas. And this is our strategic plan that I was talking about, where we're focusing on goal number 1 is really trying to get at the biology of the disorders. And so, for instance, with SBIR, what would be the technologies that would help aid in understanding the underlying complexities of brain function. Goal 2 really focuses on understanding a transition of the brain when it moves from what appears to be healthy brain to where a disorder may be being expressed. And so it's really important to understand those trajectories so that we can intervene earlier, right? And with different disorders, that may be a very different time point in development. The third goal is really focused on developing treatments and interventions, and goal 4 is really focused on how do you disseminate this to the public. So this is an example, this is a chart of all the NIH institutes and centers, and we're obviously highlighted in yellow here. The point being, though, that most of these institutes and centers listed here have SBIR and STTR programs, okay? These are all the set-aside programs. They all have them. Most of them have them. And so if you reach out to me and something doesn't fit my institute, I will tell you which institutes I think are most appropriate, or it may turn out that it's another agency that may be more appropriate. And that's simply based on how Congress has set up these institutes and centers and other agencies in terms of what our missions are supposed to be.
Meg, I'm sorry, the slides are still not
They're
progressing.
still not?
If you go onto the bottom, there's, you can select presentation mode. See the little icons on the very bottom of the screen?
So on which screen am I supposed to be?
The bottom of your slideshow.
So all I have is, I have screen. I'm not, there's not an option
on the lower right hand side, you know where you can zoom in and out? There's a little icon for presentation mode.
I'm sorry, I don't see it. But
Okay.
do you want to speak over this then?
Either that or just make sure you select each slide when you move to the next slide.
Okay, so what are you looking at right now?
You're still on slide 2.
Okay, so that's the problem. So I'm on slide 9. Actually, I'm on slide 7, moving to slide 8. So if you could take that over then, because I can't fix this. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be hitting.
Can we do that, Hannah?
Sorry, Martin, one more time.
So I see on the top of my screen display settings. Is that what you're talking about? It says swap presenter view and slideshow.
Your slides are fine.
That looks right now.
What are you on? What am I on slide 7?
Yes.
Yes.
And now am I on slide 8?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what's going on, but anyway.
It looks fixed.
Okay, so I'm not going to go into the policies and the regulations around the SBIR program, but it sounds like you have a lot of experts on your side that can help you navigate all of that. But just to point out that with the SBIR program, NIMH had a budget in fiscal year 2019 of $49 million set aside, and the STTR program had a $7 million set aside. The 2020 fiscal year has just ended, and so the finalized budget details have not been released yet, but it looks like NIMH's SBIR program was around 55 million, and the STTR was around 7.8 million. So this slide is simply to remind you, I guess the one policy I'll say is that Congress has established both guideline budgets as well as caps to budgets for phase 1 and phase 2 grants, and that includes also the phase 2B grants. And also to keep in mind that phase 1 grants, you can ask for up to 2 years of funding. Phase 2 grants, you can ask for up to 3 years of funding. The text in yellow is meant to highlight to you that the Small Business Administration has given NIH a waiver as authorized by the statute to exceed these total award hard caps for specific topics. Those topics are listed publicly on the NIH SBIR website. And what that means is that if your topic falls under that list, and it can be anywhere in the list, it does not have to fit under the NIMH specific list, that means you can request a budget higher than the caps that are listed here. Now, I strongly encourage you to contact program staff before you make assumptions about budgets. But anyway, it's out there. It is meant to try to not halt technology development given the costs of biomedical technology development costs. And so that's really why that waiver was given. Okay, so slide 10. This is to point out that generally with NIH funding, oftentimes when funding goes to academics, one of the outcomes people are really looking for are publications. Well, with the SBIR and STTR grants, we're really looking for something very different. And so I've given some examples of what we're considering really good outcomes for an SBIR grant, and it ranges from tech transfer to licensing to sales and so on. Those are the things we're looking for. You may not be achieving them immediately, you may be moving towards them, but those are very important goals. Now, if we're just talking specifically about the NIMH SBIR program, I'm listing here NIMH mission at the top that I already talked about. The diversity of our portfolio is actually very diverse. So it ranges from molecular tools that will help neuroscientists in their research up to digital health tools that could help a clinician, a caregiver, a patient. And the community served by these technologies is also very broad. It can be from neuroscience researchers, again, up to clinicians, patients, and caregivers. Obviously, one technology is not going to cover all of these communities. It would just be one. And hopefully very narrow focus. And a point that I wanted to make is that NIMH, we go out of our way to try to stay innovative and try to meet the needs of small businesses. So we pay attention to our portfolio. We celebrate the successes of the portfolio. Our communications office will tweet success stories. They will highlight success stories. And so we really encourage the small businesses that we have supported to stay in contact with us to keep us informed of their progress. And we also, we look for gap areas. So we basically focus on what are the gaps that the companies are experiencing and how can we possibly address them with resources and so on. Okay, I'm going to just talk about priorities. Does this move to slide 12? Are we on slide 12? Hopefully.
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. So I lumped this into 4 different areas. And the first is neurotechnologies. And what this is really getting at is how do we understand the brain is extremely complex. There are limits to what we understand about the brain. And so we really need neurotechnologies. I've listed some here that need to be improved so that we have better, whether it's increasing the speed of data acquisition, if it's ease of application of the measurement and so on. We really need to build better technologies. And we're also interested in novel clinical CNS activity and functional measures as well. Now, these can be applied to anything. It's not specific to psychiatric disorders, okay? But we're keeping this broad because we need to move forward in terms of understanding the brain better. And the bottom bullet is meant to highlight that if in any of these technologies, you really need quality processing and analytics. And if you're thinking of moving this to humans in a clinical use case at some point, obviously you need clinical grade. So those are some of the considerations to make. You may be developing a technology that will capture brain function better, but you need to think about the analytics that are going to go along with it and not expect everyone else to have to build their own. So treatment development is a priority. And in psychiatry, drug development has primarily been the focus in the past. We still support drug development. We're very interested in novel CNS drug targets. We're interested in unbiased compound screening assays. We're also interested in improved delivery methods. However, if industry is focused on one area and putting a lot of money into it, we're not going to put money into it. So for instance, if you look in clinicaltrials.gov, ADHD drug development is still a high priority for many pharmaceutical companies. They're focused on dopaminergic drugs. They're focused on extended release formulations. Those are very important to have in hand, but since the industry is putting a lot of money into it, there's no reason for us to be supporting that. We should be supporting the areas where there's gaps. Brain stimulation is another area of treatment development. This is a newer area in psychiatry, but we are interested in this. We are looking for technologies that will focus on targeted brain areas, considerations in terms of dose strategy and feasibility, thinking about age-related effects. There may be some stimulation paradigms you would use in an adolescent population versus a geriatric population, and so on. And then, of course, the digital health technologies. And these, typically we focus on the assessments, on treatments, and on clinical decision support tools. But you need to consider, are they engaging both the clinician and the patient and the caregiver if appropriate? Are they empirically based? And then thinking about, the privacy security issues that would be associated with them. And then biomarkers. I had mentioned before, we're highly interested in understanding the biology associated or the pathology associated with psychiatric illness. So biomarkers is a way to get at it, specifically biomarkers of the central nervous system. Now, this is something very hard for a small business to try to embark on. So I'm not saying that you should come in with some very small feasibility study and say, I'm going to use this in the clinic in 4 years, because that probably is not feasible. But you could think about steps, and some of the stepstones might be focusing on it as a clinical research tool. That might be more viable. Industry, maybe pharma, may be very interested in it for stratification purposes, for detecting symptom change, for use as pharmacodynamic responses, and so on. So just keep those things in mind. We are looking for subject level quality data in biomarkers, and that's not easy to achieve. But if we want to get to a point where we can really use them usefully in clinical trials, in clinical research, and in clinical decision support, we need to be able to get to that level. And again, pointing out the need for standardization of data collection, analytics into clinical grade, like I mentioned before. We like to see the companies go through FDA approval and reimbursement when appropriate. And finally, we have a division of AIDS research. I'm highlighting this because this is a separate set aside of SBIR and STTR funds. And that division focuses specifically on both basic research, technologies that will aid with basic research in understanding HIV in the central nervous system and understanding inflammation in the central nervous system, as well as behavioral-based technologies that are focused more on the patient, so increasing adherence, HIV testing among those most at risk, lowering disparities among vulnerable populations, and so on. So that's like a broad stroke of the types of technologies that NIMH supports. This slide is simply to remind you that when you're embarking on any SBIR project or any technology development project, you should be, not only are you focused on your scientific goals, but you should be thinking about your business strategy at the exact same time. In other words, you don't do the science, meet your milestones, and then start worrying about what market you're going to go after. So these should be going hand in hand to be successful, because you will alter your path in terms of your scientific goals as you're developing and discovering your market, the best market. So the reason I brought that up is that NIH offers, and other federal agencies offer, and you may have already heard this in some of the other presentations, but we offer different resources to help small businesses and sometimes also academic inventors in trying to move to the next step. I'm listing 2 examples here. The I-Core program is an 8-week entrepreneurial immersion course. And that one is based on, so the National Cancer Institute developed it, and it was based on the NSF's I-Core program, but its focus is on biomedical technologies within the NIH space. The second is available for phase 1 or 2 awardees, and this is the C3I program. And this was developed through the National Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Bioimaging at NIH. And that one is this is a more extensive training session, 24-week training course, and it's focused on medical devices, but that also includes digital health devices. So they've brought in the right business experts to help cover those different domains. And if anyone is awarded with an SBIR grant at NIH, I strongly encourage you to apply to one of these programs. The C3I is also available to academics as well who are interested in broadening the dissemination of their invention. You should also look at the Small Business Administration. They offer the small business development centers around the country. You should check out your local center and see what's available to you and what they can help you with. And they can provide many different resources. Again, it depends on what the center's capabilities are, but it could be grant writing assistance. They may provide grant funding. They may provide business assistance. They may help you link up to consultants and so on. Take advantage of any of these opportunities. If you are a company that is in manufacturing, started manufacturing, you should check out National Institute of Standard and Technology's Manufacturing Extension Partnership. They can provide guidance to you to help you with your manufacturing, to help improve productivity and reduce costs, and help improve in terms of the association with the environment. So to learn more about the NIH SBIR program, there are a variety of ways to learn about us, checking out websites, viewing webinars, and then also signing up for various listservs. I would also strongly encourage you to visit the NIMH SBIR website directly, and then you can also follow NIMH news and events as well. And again, as I said before, we like to advertise information through these different platforms to let small businesses know when we have specific funding opportunities available, when we have resources that are available, when a company has a success story to tell, and so on. I want to just switch very briefly to tell you a little bit about the BRAIN Initiative. This is an extremely ambitious effort, and it's a collaboration across federal agencies and non-federal affiliates. And really the goal here is it's based on recent progress in terms of technology development. The goal is to now move these technologies forward to help accelerate discovery and build the foundation we need to reduce the burden of brain disorders. Because this is such an ambitious effort, it is not led by one specific institute or agency. Okay, this is a huge collaboration. It was started in 2013, and from then up until 2019, about $1.3 billion has gone into this effort to really move neuroscience forward. It initially focused on technology development, and now it's moving towards getting those technologies into the hands of researchers to further uncover information about the brain. And the main focus here is really to look at understanding neuropathology, just how neuropathology disturbs circuit function, associates with patient symptoms, and how to target treatments. Again, this is needed for any brain disorder. It's not specific to psychiatry or neurology. And again, so it's a broad effort. If you go to their website on the BRAIN Initiative, you'll see that there are 8 themes of focus, and it starts from the molecular and then moves to mapping circuits, to understanding neural activity, and then focusing on precise intervention tools, moving towards human neuroscience, and then integrating different approaches. There's a lot more in-depth information available to you on that website. They have this is to point out that, again, I said the ambitious nature of this effort. There are 10 NIH institutes affiliated with this effort, and they work in concert with a multi-council working group. That multi-council working group also works with the other agencies and with the non-federal agency affiliates. And it focuses on funding plans, on concept clearances for potential solicitations, on communication across all of these networks, and so on. So it gets a little complicated. BRAIN Initiative actually has 2 websites. The second one is the BRAIN Initiative Alliance website, and I'm showing you that right now. That's the one that is more like the public-facing. This is the types of technologies that we have supported through this effort. This is the collaborative effort among the different organizations. So just to let you know, you want to go look at both websites when you look into this. And finally, just to remind you that the BRAIN Initiative has a separate SBIR set aside. It's not huge, but it's still an additional SBIR set aside. And so for fiscal year 20, it was approximately $5.1 million. So that's in addition to our regular SBIR program. The focus there fits within those themes that I was showing you, but any technology that would fall within those themes. And in general, it's neurotechnology development, but very, very broad focus. I would encourage you to go look at those websites, and I would also encourage you to subscribe to BRAIN updates that I have listed here. There's also an 7th annual virtual BRAIN Initiative investigators meeting that is June 15th and 16th next year. I just keep that on your calendar. When you subscribe to BRAIN updates, they will, once they have more information, they will alert the field to it. It would be a really good opportunity for you to see what are the types of technologies and research coming out of the BRAIN Initiative and how can I possibly get involved. And then finally, I want to end it, bring it back to NIMH. So I've taken the priorities that I had presented. I've now put them into a chart. And so you can see on the top left side are the neurotechnologies. Notice the themes are very similar to the BRAIN Initiative. We need more neurotechnology development to help advance our understanding of brain function, both in healthy people as well as in psychiatric disorders. The upper right, focus on treatments and interventions as a priority. Bottom left, interest in biomarker, with the caveat of, you know, obviously how hard it is to do that. And then bottom right is our division of AIDS research and the priorities in terms of both biological understanding as well as behavioral. How do you get this to people? How do you get them to adhere to the medication, and so on? And the bottom right corner is my email address. I am so sorry about the slide fiasco. That was my fault. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Meg, absolutely terrific. Thank you so much. You're kind of busy, aren't you? No idle time for you. So I thought what we would do is flip over to the Q&A from Jean and Jared and Linda now. Focus on their questions first, and I have a wealth of questions as well, but let's tackle Jean's first. And welcome back, Jean. So Jean's project, he indicates that he does indeed qualify, Meg, under a waiver during the evaluation period. Is there a negative impact to higher budget costs? Or another way of putting it is cost effectiveness of a project. Is that part of your evaluation?
Actually, that's an excellent question, and people always, I mean, routinely ask that question, and I think they feel that they have to fit within the cap in order for the institute or center to think that this is acceptable. The bottom line is, and the first thing I would say is talk to the institute. So if it's my institute, talk to me or the appropriate, we have a whole team of people, so the appropriate person on the team where this application would be assigned. And you want to explain, you want to show us what you're thinking your aims will be and what you think that budget would be and why. And then we can look at it and tell you whether we think this is reasonable or not for the institute. Now, other institutes, some institutes are a lot smaller. They may have much more strict rules for that institute about what they can accept in terms of a budget cap. And that's why you have to talk to the right institute. The other thing to keep in mind is, even if we say we will accept you submitting an application with a higher budget, review may say you're over budgeting for X, Y, and Z, and they may cut the budget. And once they cut the budget, it's very hard to get it restored. And so you have to go out of your way to have a very clear budget justification. So if you're using animals, for instance, very clear why you need that number of animals. If you're using equipment, why do you have to buy this state-of-the-art piece of equipment when you have one in your lab already? You know, so I mean, you have to really be careful about what you're proposing. But yes, you can go over. It is not going to hurt the application, provided the institute is saying, okay, that's fine in terms of submitting the budget like that.
Just to follow up on that, Meg, is there ever any negotiation of ultimate final budget that goes on by any chance?
Well, generally, I don't like to cut budgets, because then you start to cut aims, right? So, and then, so generally we try not to do that. I mean, if a review group has cut your budget, that's cut. But if we're ready to award and we don't have issues with, we don't see anything in the budget that's redundant or, inappropriate, we would want to award it at that level. Now, at the end of the fiscal year, we may have to cut a little bit of the budget because this is the only amount of money we have left, but that's a very rare case.
Yeah. Also wondering, I'm also reminded of several proposals that have been submitted where it appears as though the budget just isn't high enough, quite frankly, relative to the specific aims, the study approach being proposed and so forth. Do you find that happens a lot, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, generally that honestly happens, at least at our institute, when the applicant does not contact us ahead of time. So I admit the guidelines and the rules about budgets, I think, are written terribly. I didn't write them. and if you don't contact us ahead of time, I could see why you're interpreting them different than what the real truth is. So what happens is, like a biomarker application, they'll come in with this tiny little budget, $150,000. They're collecting samples from a couple people. That's not a good feasibility study, right? So in those cases, we try to have a discussion with the applicant and then say, look, in a resubmission, you can ask for more money. Maybe they ask for 6 months. You can ask for 2 years. Try to help them think through what would be an appropriate feasibility study for a biomarker, for instance.
Got it. And thanks very much, Meg, for that. That helps a lot. And Jared, first of all, says, great presentation, Dr. Grabb, and ditto to that. His question is about biomarkers. And when you were discussing biomarkers in your presentation, were you talking about blood, urine, other samples to draw biomarkers, or are there any other sources that you are seeing that are promising to you right now?
So a great question. The biomarker space in psychiatry is really early, I would say, unfortunately, right? And so we are primarily interested in how it associates with brain function. So when you're talking about blood and urine-based markers, for instance, we would want to see it associated with brain function. That doesn't mean with a clinical assessment. That means, so it's not simply depression versus no depression. It would mean, like, do you see an association with some function in the brain where you are convinced that this blood-based biomarker is truly an adequate surrogate? And it rarely do they line up that easily. I mean, that's part of the problem, like why the BRAIN Initiative was launched, is that the CNS is very complicated, right? So what we would suggest is going after, to the extent you can, going after some kind of a central nervous system measure. A lot of academics and companies are focused on EEG. It's a much more easier delivery, but they also are looking at fMRI as well. And when I tried to push in my conversation, really focus on early stage kinds of products, is thinking about, like, if you're using it as a stratification marker and can get industry to build that into their trials, that's a win for everyone. If you can get clinical researchers to use it in their studies, they will be able to determine, the use case, how this can be used, and uncover things you might not know about the biomarker. But I wouldn't propose that you're just going to put this in the clinic immediately. I think that's an extremely ambitious expectation.
Got it. Thank you. And Linda has a question. It's been shown that sunshine has an effect on the brain. Sure seems to for me anyway. But she is working on a technology that mimics the sun. Is this an area, a study that might be of interest, possibly of consideration for funding?
It might. I mean, a lot of those types of studies have been going to the NCCIH, so that's National Institute. Well, it's the Complementary Medicine Institute. I can't remember their actual official name. Sorry. If you email me, I could send you links to their information, and they provide their priorities on their website. That's probably the best. Talk to them first.
Okay, great. And this goes back to the waiver topic, Meg, and also overall just relative to the budget. And Simal was asking if this group can propose a project which would require a higher budget and ask for the cap amount, indicating that they'll have other funds to support the rest. So I'm not entirely certain the question is here, but Simal appears to have funding that may be coming from alternative or other sources to fund in part the proposed project. But yeah, so we'll do our best to infer from this one, or maybe you, Simal, you can clarify that. But a budget that would require a higher budget than may be the case for the 256.
Yeah, I think I understand the
Okay.
question. So we get a lot actually in the drug development space. That's such an expensive endeavor. So a company often cost shares, but the way you would present it in that in your application is you're only asking for the budget that NIH that you need from NIH. So you're asking for that budget. You put in the budget justification that your company is providing X amount to cover other studies, present whatever those studies are, other work. It's easier to separate things out. That's the easiest way for the government to handle this. And then including a letter from like your CFO that says, we have the funds, also agrees, we have the funds to cover X, Y, and Z. So that's perfectly acceptable. Reviewers like to see that a company's cost sharing if they have the funds to do that. So that would be fine.
Terrific. And artificial intelligence, AI, or quantum computing. Amir I expect is preparing a proposal relative to that. Is this an area that you consider for funding, or have you indeed funded projects that pertain to AI or quantum computing?
So the good question. I mean, it seems like a lot of our projects now have some kind of AI built in. So even from the basic neuroscience technologies, when I was describing the neurotechnologies, they generate, like if you just think of EEG, it's generating millions of data points, right? And right now, it's really hard to analyze all of that. And so, so from the basic side, or even with morphology, with more microscopy, tons and tons of data. How do you define the data? How do you analyze the data? How, you know, and so on. But then also when you move into the clinical space, there are a lot of technologies who are really interested in, can I capture behavior in a way, for instance, in an individual that will help inform clinical decision making? Again, you're capturing tons of data. You don't expect clinicians to be going through the reams of data themselves, but you really need to build in some of these automated and learning processes that will help improve its detection and be helpful to clinicians, if that makes sense. So I would say we're seeing it in a lot of places.
Terrific, thanks. And while we're waiting for some other questions, and I know we're getting closer to the bewitching hour here, but several of our startup teams with which we're working are understanding, or we have been advised that NIH agencies are looking for precursor data. That is to say, data or research that you have done up to this particular moment in time, and now you are seeking additional phase 1 for feasibility, proof of concept, and so forth. How critical or how important is our preliminary or earlier studies, data developed, and so forth?
So it depends. I mean, I know that preliminary data is not required in the SBIR program, but for instance, if you are trying to convince a review committee in NIH that you have the capability of doing something, so whether it's the collection and measurement of a particular type of data and analysis of the data, or maybe there's no data out there in the public that is convincing that this should work, then you're going to want to have some kind of preliminary evidence that it could. So in other words, there has to be enough, you have to have enough background information that you're presenting the review committee that this makes sense, this seems plausible, and you have the right expertise to do it, if that makes any sense.
Yep. Okay, got it. And following along that, another question, I was just kind of curious, for the SBIRs and STTRs that you have been funding in the past, how many of those awardees are comprised of collaborative efforts? That is to say, an SBC, a small business concern, in concert with a corporate research, or in concert with a research university such as the University of California. And how interesting is that for you in terms of making a determination of go or no go?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we see a lot of academic small business collaborations, either because the academic is the inventor and the company is now further developing it, but really is relying on the inventor to help them, you know, ensure that the quality is good as they're moving forward. Or they're using clinicians as the test bed, because if they're developing a clinical technology, for instance, they really need the expert academics in, you know, using it and working with it. So that's very common. We actually see, though, small businesses working together on projects, bringing different expertise together, and then obviously working on the IP and all of that, working all of that out ahead of time. We sometimes see big business involved. It's very rare. It might be in the case of, let's say that technology is being built that will be used to help inform an HMO, you know, and how they're monitoring, if they're trying to keep costs down, for instance, with patients with schizophrenia or something like that. They may have a test bed, maybe with different HMOs to see how well it works. So we do see some of that. A lot of times, though, like if it's drug development, really the push is you have to get to a specific phase of your development, and only then is pharma going to want to get involved, either buying you out or, you know, forming a strategic alliance or something like that.
Got it. And I was intrigued when you were discussing I-Core and C3I. Now, UC Riverside is a National Science Foundation I-Core site. And I was curious, C3I, is that in addition to, or in lieu of, or instead of I-Core? Are they one or the other, or both can be done?
So for your phase one, you would pick one or the other or something else. But you could do I-Core, for instance, as phase one, and then C3I as phase two, if you have a device. If you don't have it, like if you're doing drug development, they don't have the expertise to help you. So it would depend on the technology space. I-Core is open to any technology,
Yep.
but only to phase one.
Okay, terrific. That helps. One final question before Misty sends an electric shock over the over to me to get me to stop here. Digital health, e-health, you had mentioned tools and so forth. Do you have any examples of recent projects that you have funded? And my reason for asking that is that we at the University of California, both within the university and many outside as well, are focusing on a lot of digital solutions. Do you have any examples of ones that were funded that you were especially interested in?
Well, I think that space is so broad.
Yeah.
And what I love about that space is that, again, when I say so broad, it's meeting needs that, you know, that are really necessary, I think, in health. And in psychiatry in particular, anything that can help a patient or help a, you know, the clinician understand the patient's needs, I think is really helpful, right? Even in, I think of them so helpful in clinical trials in that, you know, in a late stage clinical trial, you send the patients home, the subjects home with their drug medication. You have no idea what they're doing the rest of the time before they come back for their next, anything you can do to collect objective information in a case like that to try to help uncover, do we think they took the medication? Do we think that they're on the right path? Are we worried about any side effects? Those kinds of things I think are helpful. I mean, in addition to the clinical relevance.
Sure.
I think all of this is intriguing. I think there's so much data being generated. And how do we parse, and that's where you need like the AI experts and others to help get through all of this data to determine what is most useful and what is not. When you think of suicide and suicide risk, you can imagine how digital health could really potentially help a lot quicker and get to people and help them, immediately. So, I mean, there's so many opportunities here. And I think that, and there are things on the market, and there's a lot for people could just be, buying directly right now. One thing we caution with the digital health companies is we don't want them to just simply selling apps to patients. We're more comfortable, we think the best dissemination, the broadest dissemination is, and this is where you work with those resources like I-Core or C3I. How do you get this into clinical practice? If clinicians aren't going to work with it, it's not that useful, right? Would HMOs, are they interested in it? How do you get practices interested? So trying to make it more of a global utility as opposed to just a single patient trying to track things by themselves.
That's great. Well, Dr. Grabb, Meg, an hour has come by. We could spend an additional 2 or 3 the whole day with you, but I know that you have to flip over to your one-on-ones. This has been fantastic, and we learned a great deal and very much appreciate the time that you've given us, and very much appreciate it. And thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone.
And so, Misty or Hannah, I'll flip it over to you to the logistics side of life.